Today, what we wanted to share out a little bit with you guys, since we are nearing the end of our first academic quarter, we have begun coaching our teachers on our reporting process. Report cards, progress reporting is what Toddle is calling it in our system. It's basically how we kind of monitor your students' growth, assess your students' growth, and make sure they are meeting not only subject area standards, but also connecting to our IB units of inquiry. So, Ms. King, am I sharing correctly?
Yes, ma'am. It's good.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I thought I'd just go ahead and introduce you. I can't see my own screen because I'm talking. Just let you know a little bit about our philosophy. We are committed to delivering a high quality instruction to your students, and our grading system is designed to be holistic. It's not just marks on worksheets and marks on activities that the kids do. Yes, their daily work and their learning experiences and their projects do come into play, but we also use different kinds of ongoing, more anecdotal assessments to help develop those soft skills, those 21st century learner skills, or as we call them, the IB approaches to learning and learner profile. We just make sure all of those are accounted for as we evaluate the growth of a child to really develop the entire child, not just what they can put on paper, but how their thinking is actually developing. So as I said earlier, we do use formative and summative assessments. I'll explain a little bit more about those in just a minute. They will be ongoing and adopt a wide range of strategies. You know, we have to do some paper and pencil type things. That's learning, but conversations, projects, independent inquiry and research, all of those things can be rolled together to help give a snapshot of how a child is growing. So this is just a quote from the IBO Learning and Teaching document. And the purpose of assessment is to really inform learning and teaching. Lone Star is guided by the idea that assessment is ongoing and ever-changing as the teachers use information collected by activities and assessment to identify what the students know and understand, and also determine what students can do throughout the learning process. So we feel that teachers can become more effective for your students when they're constantly learning about what your students can know and do. They reflect and modify and change things as necessary. And then they're able to give specific feedback to really help guide your child. Parents can become more informed through assessment when you understand that what learning goals are expected of your child. You know what they're working towards, you know the kind of progress that they're making. And that way you can also help to extend your child's learning at home. If you know what they're doing in the classroom and how they're growing in the classroom, you can find things at home to help enhance and build that passion for what it is they're learning about. So this is just an infographic that they have throughout the IBO documents, or the IB official documents. So in our PYP learning environment, the learning process itself is just as important as the learning outcomes. So that means we work to design learning experiences and assessments that not only support skill understanding, but also the development of soft skills, the things that you can't always measure, but you can see progress as people grow. They emerge through the learning process. These are things that we call our approaches to learning: social skills, self-management skills, thinking skills, and things like that. I have a whole other slide on that for you in a moment. But it's not only, like I said, the outcomes. It's not just the standards. We want to develop the skills that a person needs to really interact with the world as they grow up. So as we are designing our learning activities and assessments for your children, teachers ask themselves some key questions. And I just have a few of them listed here. I'll read through them so I don't miss them. But what learning goals will be achieved? How can I involve the students in assessment design? How could students engage in conversations with teachers about the development of their skills and concept knowledge? How do I gather evidence and data? How do I give feedback, real authentic feedback, to help the student understand what to do? What results am I expecting from my students? And then how are all of these results that we gather, how is all this information that we get from the children going to help us change our teaching practices to meet their needs, whatever level they're working on, whatever interests they have? How can we use this information that we gather from the students to help build their knowledge in a way that they need? So on the LSLA newsletter last weekend, there was a grading document posted. If you haven't seen it, I do encourage you to go back into your email and click through that link. It shows very specifically what happens throughout our different grade levels for grading. So I'm going to start talking about grades 2 through 5, and I'll address kindergarten and first grade a little bit later. But as published on that document, grades 2 through 5 are assessed on a 7-point scale for subject areas, as well as the units of inquiry that they explore in class. Remember, there are 6 of those each year. We also have some achievement or effort type scores that we use to grade those soft skills, those approaches to learning. Those scores are consistently, sometimes and rarely, and we say CSR. So that's how you'll see on progress reporting. And it just tells you, is a student consistently doing something, sometimes able to do something independently, or maybe they're still growing towards it, so they're more of a rarely doing it on their own, but they're getting there. So you'll see those kind of evaluations for our approaches to learning skills. As I said before, kindergarten and first grade are slightly different, and I'll talk about those toward the end. But what are we going to report on? This slide kind of shows you what our teachers are looking for when we set out to do this first term progress reporting. We will use daily classwork. That not only means things that they have submitted in person or on Toddle, tangible work, but also anecdotal things. Conversations that the students are having with their teachers, questioning practices. Are they learning to think deeper? Are they able to inquire? Are they able to present something or even hear a presentation effectively and process the directions well? So those kind of daily activities are things that we use to develop grades for our students. Ongoing formative assessments, both formal and informal. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. Our unit of inquiry summative assessments, that is a formal project that is always used a rubric. It's developed with a rubric and a specific task in mind. So I'll talk about that as well. We also informally comment to parents about the development on the IB learner profile traits. Those are the 10 traits that we feel are integral to a human's growth and development in order to be a contributing citizen of the world. And so you'll notice on our progress reports, when you get the progress reporting home in your Toddle, that you will see comments specifically geared towards how your child demonstrates those profile traits. And then we also informally on our CSR scale talk to you and give you feedback on the implementation of those approaches to learning. Before I move forward, let me just give you quick definitions and differences between a formative assessment and a summative assessment. Formative assessments are kind of, the way I remember them is that they are given as you are forming your knowledge. You're always formatively assessing students on a daily basis. You're seeing how their thoughts are being formed. It's going on as you continue with your learning experiences. Now, these can be both formal, more graded, or informal, more just anecdotal. What does a teacher observe? They're checks for understanding. They take place all through the learning process. They could be observations, tests or quizzes, discussions, journals, self-reflection, peer review, learning games, exit tickets, anything like that. And the reason we like to have those is so that teachers can increase student understanding. Teachers can get the feedback from the students, see where they are on a thinking rubric, and then drive them to think deeper about a topic. All of the formative assessments build together to help scaffold the summative assessment. So think of it like a ladder. The formative assessments build up towards an overarching summative assessment, and a summative assessment is an actual formal project or task or an experience that the teacher has created that aims to evaluate student understanding against a set of criteria, which is maybe an open-ended task or a conversation piece, a guided performance or composition, some way to creatively represent student achievement and connection to the central idea of the unit of inquiry. Summative assessments are scored using teacher-created rubrics that start at a 1 and go to a 7. And the rubrics are given before, during, and after any project is assigned. So everyone knows exactly what the outcome should be and where they're aiming to get. So feedback, as you know, many of you know, we are also learning Toddle. I know you guys are learning to use Toddle. We are learning to use Toddle, and there is a lot on the back end for reporting and grading. And our goal is to have feedback shared online through a combination of the Toddle portfolio piece, which is still in development as far as our procedures and how we would like to implement it versus how it is set up in the system right now. We're still learning that. But our goal is to have feedback shared with you through that portfolio feature and also quarterly progress reporting. Those are your traditional report cards. So you will see those at the end of the quarter. What you will see grades on or comments on are the unit of inquiry summative assessments and performance comments. The development of the approaches to learning skills. Your teachers will comment specifically on those for your child so you can really maybe see a snapshot of how they are in the classroom. And then we will have some subject-specific tasks that the teachers take into account to grade your student on our 1 to 7 scale in the different subject areas. Now, when I say that we're still kind of forming how we share those pieces of evidence with you on the subject-specific tasks, that's what we are still trying to learn on Toddle, to the best way to effectively give you guys those portfolio evidences without overwhelming your feeds. So I'm so thankful that you guys are patient with us as we try to find ways to make it easier on you. So we're working on that, but you will see the progress reporting fluidly and that will come out at the end of the quarter. So here we are. So I told you I would talk a little bit more, just a tiny bit about those approaches to learning. I mentioned earlier the CSR rating scale for evaluating approaches to learning, and also effort and achievement on our units of inquiry summatives, okay? So the C stands for consistently. So for example, if your teacher is assessing self-management skills, that's how well a student manages their time, turns in their work independently, participates in class appropriately, whether it's Zoom or in person. That might mean that the student consistently demonstrates the ability to participate correctly via Zoom. Maybe they consistently demonstrate the ability to select quality research sources and apply their thinking in new ways. The S would stand for sometimes. So if we're talking, let's think about that self-management aspect. Maybe the student sometimes demonstrates the ability to manage their own work time, but still needs some guidance to stay on task. And then the R stands for rarely. So this would be something like if a student just really does not contribute in group conversations or learning activities, you might have conversations with your teacher about the student rarely demonstrates effort towards communicating with their peers. Not only do we tell you kind of where they fall on the rubric, our teachers will say the student rarely demonstrates ways to communicate with peers. Our next steps will be practicing one-on-one with the teacher. So there's actionable steps that we hope the teachers will guide you and kind of give you some outcomes and some things to practice at home with your child. The second piece of our holistic kind of developing our learners, not just as information machines, but as young human beings, is that International Baccalaureate Learner Profile. So these are the 10 traits. And remember the learner profile is an integral piece of our program. It's how we develop those soft skills, our children's ability to participate in society in a respectful and kind way. We will, very often our teachers will provide opportunities for your children to practice these skills, assess themselves on how well they're growing, and even share what they know about the skills with other people. This helps them not only internalize their own learning, but also develop strategies to adjust how they interact with different personality types as they get older. These IB learner profile traits will be part of progress monitoring. You'll see it as kind of some informal general comments by the teacher. And they'll share out the strengths of your students in these areas, as well as steps towards developing them in the future. Now, not every report card will have comments on every learner profile, but by the end of this year, you will have a snapshot of your child in all of the learner profile traits by the end of the year. All right, so summative assessments. These are performance tasks that are designed by the teachers very specifically to align with the central idea and the lines of inquiry. And they're used to evaluate the student's level of connection to that central idea. It is carefully planned to allow for student agency. And agency is something that as we grow as an IB school, there will be a lot more agency provided for the children. It just means choice. They'll be able to choose how they show their learning. The teacher might give a task, but the way they present the task or the product that they make showing their connections could be their own. We are in the very first summative of the very first year, so it is a little more guided this time, but it's guided by design in order to help build skills and background knowledge to help them have more agency as they grow through our program. They are completed in a set amount of time with much independence given to the students to show what they know. The teacher will lay out the task, but as far as how the student presents it, our goal is that they think about it independently and think about their own connections and make something that shows how well they learned. It should incorporate all the subject areas that they learned within the unit of inquiry. So it'll touch on all the topics and connect them to the big concept that they learned. Again, it's very guided right now by design because this is our very first summative, but those of you who will move on to the program with us as you have young kids going up, you will see so much more independence towards this piece of work, this summative piece every unit. Excuse me. The work that they produce for this will be graded on a 1 to 7 rubric. And the rubric is, like I said earlier, presented at the beginning of work time, so they know exactly what will be expected of them. And they can also know a bit of the self-management piece. How much effort will they put in order to get the grade that they want or the score that they want? They will also be able to reflect on their own performance, as reflection is a key piece of growing as an IB learner. So I made up a unit of inquiry here to kind of give you an example of what a summative assessment task could look like. So I randomly chose one of our units of inquiry, how we organize ourselves, and we're going to pretend this is grade 4. The central idea I developed for my pretend unit, people organize themselves because of geographic, economic, and human factors. So throughout the unit, I would be designing learning experiences, conversations, tasks, projects to help meet these lines of inquiry, which are also a little bit standards-based. So regions are created and classified based on geographic and human characteristics. Specifically for 4th grade, one of the TEKS, those state standards that we have to teach, is regions of Texas. So this could be a great opportunity for a 4th grade teacher to incorporate some social studies and geography. Costs and benefits of economic decisions is another one of my fake lines of inquiry here. So you also see some economics, some math. You could also put in, studying money and how the mathematics behind money. So there's some math that could be incorporated as well. And a third fake line of inquiry, how geography affects population distribution and growth of cities. Again, a lot of social studies there, a lot of math concepts, a lot of opportunities to use writing and reading to enhance those lines of inquiry. So say that was my unit, and then I would say at the beginning, before we start the unit, I would think of a summative task. That way I know how to build them up that ladder towards what they need to do at the end. So at the end, I would expect each student to pick a region of our state that we studied in class and create a city that could inhabit that region. They will explain the ways in which the city's success is impacted by the geographic, economic, and human factors. So that task kind of incorporates all of the lines of inquiry, and it could show how the students connect to the central idea. If I were really giving this to our students this year here at LSLA, I would tell them, you know, they're going to make a poster and tell me about their city. Eventually, they will have a lot of strategies in their back pocket, and they could present this however they want. Make a PowerPoint, write a song, write a play, do the poster, any type of way that shows how they connect to not only the unit, but also how they learn and how they think. So here's our project. How would we grade it? Now, since I did make that one up, I apologize, I did not take the time to make the rubric, but I am showing you on this slide actually our 5th grade draft for our first summative here at LSLA. And the 5th graders have been working on the central idea of beliefs and values are diverse among communities and can influence the perspective of the members. So you will see on this rubric that we have a 7 is our outstanding, I apologize. And it lays out very clearly what a student would have to do to obtain that 7. Now, it doesn't have necessarily the task. Their task is going to be to create a shield that reflects who they are and why they are that way. So I won't read through this entire thing, but you can see how when you go down the rubric scale here, the expectation, they get shorter and shorter. The descriptors get smaller and smaller. So our number 1 and our simple not there yet, they didn't do the work, or maybe they did something besides what was asked of them. So as you move up the rubric, maybe they do what is asked of them, but it kind of doesn't talk about anything that the teacher wanted them to. So I will go, once we're done with this, obviously this will be posted or sent out on the newsletter, so you can read through this a little bit more on your own, but you can see how you start at that 7 on the rubric, showing exactly what the students need to do to get the outcome that they want, and then it just is very clear and descriptive going down. All right, so this is great for adults. There's a lot of words, there's not a lot of color, it's kind of boring. How do we teach what this 1 to 7 means for kids? And in fact, it helped me a lot when I first started with Imagine to understand what the 1 to 7 is by having this kind of rubric. So this is an example of actually something every one of our classrooms, virtual or in person, has hanging on their walls. And this is to help the students kind of learn what the numbers mean and what the different levels of thinking are that they can obtain. And it is hung vertically in each classroom. I apologize, I had to split it into 3 segments to fit it on the presentation, but it's hung vertically with 7 at the top and 1 at the bottom. All right, you'll notice that the pages are color-coded, just very much like a stoplight. You know, society is real good at red means I need a lot of help, yellow is okay, green, we're good, I got it, and then for our purposes for this rubric, we use blue for the 6 and 7 because that shows just another giant step up that thinking scale. So I will just let you guys look at that for a second before I move on. We do like to hang it vertically with that 7 at the top to kind of give students a visual about reaching high for those 7s, right? We have high expectations of our students. I know you have high expectations of your children. So we just use that visual as kind of a way to show them that moving up the scale is reaching for those really big grades and reaching for those really, really strong connections. So this is nice. This is good to help understand the levels, and you can kind of see how we laid it out on a summative rubric, but we do also use this 1 to 7 scale to look at some of our subject-specific work. And I wanted to kind of show you what that looks like, what a sample would look like for different subject area rubrics and how it relates to the 1 through 7. So the driving forces behind these grading in the subject areas are not just marks on daily activities, but also that, anecdotal reporting about how the kids are learning, what they're learning, how they're able to communicate their learning, and how they're able to show their thinking. So let me show you a sample math rubric. So this would be, say you had a traditional math practice page with 20 problems. Here's kind of how it relates to a 1 to 7 rubric when our teachers are kind of looking at the picture of the child. If you'll notice, on the 7, up here, every problem was correct, and there's also multiple thinking strategies shown. We know that in math, there are many ways to get to one answer. And if a child is able to show and tell many different ways to get to that answer, that really tells us as educators that they have number sense and they understand the relationships between the numbers. If they're just showing one thinking strategy, maybe that traditional multiplication algorithm that we all know and love, if they're proficient at that, that's great, but it's just one modality of thinking. So if they are able to really zero in on that number sense and take that traditional algorithm and show us what that means to them as far as how the numbers relate to each other, that shows a different level of thinking. So that's what I mean by multiple thinking strategies. A number 6, or a score of 6, is also asking the child, or asking, does the child have multiple thinking modalities? Can they show me their traditional algorithm? Can they also break down that number and show me different ways to get to the same answer because they understand the numbers? But you know what? We're all human. Every now and then we make mistakes. I still make mistakes. I add things incorrectly. I have to count on my fingers every now and then to double check myself. So we're not going to penalize for mistakes so much. A 6 is a very high level score. Maybe there's 1 or 2 little procedural mistakes. It's okay. They're still showing their thinking. They're still showing that they're understanding. I've failed to edit the entire thing here, but a 5, same thing. You're going to have a few mistakes. All right. But even if you have 0 mistakes and the child only shows one way of thinking, one strategy to solve it, that shows a great level of thinking. We love that they can use their knowledge and apply it to what we're asking them to do. But in order to really tell us that they're understanding those things, they need to have multiple strategies in their back pocket. So that would still be a 5. Again, excellent, excellent score to attain is a 5. So that's pretty good work. Yeah, there are some mistakes. Again, procedural mistakes happen, especially in math. A 4 means you're meeting your expectations. You get it. Sure, there are some mistakes, but you can do it independently for the most part, and you can tell the teacher maybe what you're doing by showing your thinking. Now, as you go down the rubric, more mistakes are happening, which just tells the teacher that they don't understand the concept. The level of thinking needs some more help, and that's when these kind of scores are showing up on daily tasks. That's when our teachers will create a little remediation type lesson, or maybe send some extra work for your practice ideas for your child, and just help engage them in a way to build them towards those 4s and higher. Here's just another example of a paragraph writing rubric. This is the teacher would have been focusing on making sure there's a main idea and details. And then also, are they writing it clearly? Are they spelling words okay? Not every word might be spelled perfectly, but they have a good grasp on it. The spelling is not interfering with how the teacher is reading it. And then grammar. You can see we've taken a 5-point rubric here. And a teacher, the ideas would be the student will write a paragraph. The teacher assesses the paragraph, circles, where they fall on here, and then adds up the total and see our 1 to 7 correlation on a rubric like this. Again, anytime we're scoring something like this with a rubric, or we're asking a student to do this, they should see the rubric as they're working and before they're working. That way, it's not a surprise. They know what they're trying to do. Another example is for journaling, science journals, math journals, reading journals. Sometimes teachers like to assess those. It's part of self-management. It's part of thinking skills, and also just communication skills. Can you communicate clearly? So just a few things that the teacher was looking for in this one. Was there self-management? Did they journal the way they were supposed to? Did they write and write and write, or did they write one sentence and give up? And then how are the mechanics of the work? Are they following the instructions of the teacher? So, and then on here, based on the number of checks, that would be the 1 to 7 correlation. All right, I said, as I said before, everything I talked about earlier mostly applied to grades 2 through 5. Kindergarten and first grade, we do this a little bit differently because our younger students are still learning so many true foundational skills for math and reading, you know, number sense, letters, phonics, things like that. So we grade them in a little bit different way as far as the subject areas go. They will still have a unit of inquiry summative task that they'll work on in class, and it will be scored with the 1 to 7, just as grades 2 through 5. They will have an effort score of the consistently, sometimes, or rarely. And that would be the kind of how well they work the self-management. And then they do have approaches to learning comments that you will see on their progress reporting that tells how they're growing as a young learner. Now it's, you know, developmentally appropriate, obviously. Your student will never be penalized for being in kindergarten and not staying quiet and seated the whole day. They're little, so they're still learning how to be a student, but your teacher will be commenting on how they are growing as a learner. As far as subject area grading goes, for our kindergarten and first grade students, we utilize more of a standards-based academic checklist. We have taken the state standards, they call those the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, and we've kind of put them into a checklist form. So throughout the unit, if a teacher addresses a certain standard, they will be able to report on if the student consistently meets that standard independently, sometimes does, or rarely does. And the standards are they're very laid out, they're very clear. For math, for example, it's can the student count from 0 to 5? Can the student count from 0 to 10? So there are benchmark numbers that the state has kindergarten and first grade get to, and then can they group by 2s and 5s and 10s? So as they meet those standards, the teachers will be able to address if they can consistently do it, if they can sometimes do it on their own, but they still need help, or if they're really, really struggling to meet those standards on their own. It's important that I tell you too that not every skill for kindergarten and first grade is taught every unit. Okay, there are a lot of skills that the state asks us to teach throughout the year. So if you get a checklist, or if you see your progress reporting and something is not assessed at this time, it might say not assessed. It might just be like a little, you know, grayed out box. Don't worry, throughout the year, our teachers will hit all of those things, but it might be that we're just, you know, going on throughout the year and growing as the year goes. All right, that's it. You don't have to listen to me talk anymore. Obviously, if you've got questions, contact your child's teacher. And then a lot of communication comes out through the school regarding grading, especially now that we have finished some assessments that we collected data on, and as we move into preparing our report cards or that progress reporting for you. So please watch those school newsletters, and even now your teachers should start sending you personalized classroom newsletters that have some things that are special just for your individual classrooms. So keep your eyes on those things for information about grade reporting and everything that's coming out. This video, we will work to get it posted online as well, so you can refer back to that at any time. And then you always have the email address. Obviously, you can reach out to me as well.